I think we can all relate to this. There's so much info out there about mindfulness and happiness,
Hmm.
you know, like drink from a fire hose kind of thing. You see all these messages everywhere, be present, meditate more, all this stuff. But it's so easy to just get lost in all the noise. So that's what this deep dive is all about. We're going to cut through the clutter and we're going to explore together what mindfulness really means. And we're going to talk about how it changes your brain and like how even small things you can do can make you happier.
Yeah. It's interesting how mindfulness is often made way too complicated. It's not about like reaching the Zen state where your mind's totally blank, and actually trying to do that can be super frustrating.
Oh, yeah, I can imagine. My mind is like one of those popcorn machines always popping off with something. So if it's not about emptying our minds, then what is mindfulness really all about?
Well, it's really about just paying attention to right now, but
Mhm.
with this sense of openness and curiosity.
Right.
And one of the biggest things is like approaching your thoughts and feelings without judging them.
Okay, but what does that even mean, like not judging? Like, isn't it natural to think whether our thoughts are good or bad?
Well, it's not about like ignoring a thought just because it feels kind of bad. Let's say you're feeling stressed about a deadline. Instead of like getting all caught up in that anxiety, just kind of acknowledge it. Okay, so there's some stress here. Without deciding if it's good or bad or wrong, it's like watching a cloud go by. You see it, but you don't get swept away with it.
I like that analogy a lot. It definitely takes the pressure off trying to like force my mind to be calm all the time.
Hmm.
So how does this watching clouds approach? How does it affect our brains?
Well, research has shown that mindfulness can actually change how your brain is structured. Like over time, especially areas like your prefrontal cortex, that's the part that handles planning and decision making. And also the hippocampus, which deals with memory and learning.
Wait, so it's not just about feeling less stressed for a minute. It's about like rewiring our brains for the better. That's amazing. What else is going on in our brains when we're mindful?
Well, one of the key changes is that the amygdala calms down. That's the part of your brain that handles fear. And that's why people who practice mindfulness, they often say they feel less anxious and more resilient when things get tough. They don't freak out as much when they're stressed, and they bounce back more quickly from tough stuff.
That makes sense. It's like
What's
mindfulness gives us a little bit more space
right?
between when something stressful happens and how we react.
Yeah.
So less stress, less anxiety. But how does that actually make us happier?
Well, mindfulness helps you become happier in three main ways: by savoring, by releasing, and by appreciating. Savoring means like really experiencing positive moments fully, like when you're having that first cup of coffee in the morning, instead of just like chugging it down without thinking about it.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah.
I'm usually so focused on getting to work that I don't even taste my coffee.
Yeah.
But if I was actually present with that experience, it would be so much better.
Exactly. And then releasing, that's all about learning to let go of negative thoughts, the ones that just drag you down. Mindfulness doesn't mean that you won't have negative thoughts anymore, but it gives you the tools to see them without getting totally hooked by them.
So instead of getting trapped in that loop of, I'm not good enough or I messed up, it's more about seeing the thought and then letting it go like a leaf floating downstream.
Exactly. And lastly, appreciating is about growing your sense of gratitude. When you're more present, you start to notice the good things in your life more easily, and that makes you feel more appreciation and content.
Like taking a second to really appreciate a conversation with a friend. Or even something as simple as like a sunny day, those little joys we miss when we're rushing through life.
Precisely. Now, you might be thinking, okay, how do I actually do this mindfulness thing? The good news is that there's a lot of simple practices that you can fit into your everyday life. It doesn't have to be complex or take a lot of time.
Okay, that's a relief. I definitely don't have hours to just sit around meditating.
Mhm.
So what are some easy ways to get started?
One of the most basic practices is mindful breathing. It's as easy as just taking a couple moments to focus on your breath, feeling that air come in through your nose, nice and cool and refreshing. Then follow it as it goes into your lungs and expands your chest.
I've heard some people say that these short little mindfulness exercises are just a Band-Aid. Like they don't really fix the problem. What do you think about that?
Well, it is true that if you practice for longer, you'll get deeper benefits, but even just a few minutes of mindful breathing can make a huge difference. It's about making these little pockets of stillness throughout your day and training your mind to come back to right now. It's like working out a muscle. The more you practice, the stronger it gets. And you get better at being aware and focusing.
So it's not about totally changing my life. It's about those little moments of awareness that add up. What are some other practices that I could try?
Another simple one is mindful eating. Instead of just scarfing down your lunch, try slowing down. And use all of your senses. Notice the colors, the textures, the smells, and the tastes of your food. You might actually enjoy your meals more and even feel fuller with less food.
That sounds great. But to be honest with my schedule, most of my lunches are at my desk while I'm working. Any advice for being mindful in that kind of situation?
Even when you're busy, you can still find moments for mindfulness. Maybe before you take a bite, just stop for a sec and really look at the food in front of you. Take a deep breath and be grateful for the energy it's going to give you. It's not about having this perfect Zen lunch break. It's about just shifting your attention in little ways.
That's really helpful. So it's not about reaching some perfect mindfulness state. It's about those little shifts in how we pay attention throughout the day. What are some other practices we could try?
There's also body scan meditation, where you focus on each part of your body and notice any sensations you feel without judging them. Or mindful walking, where you pay attention to what it feels like to take each step, feeling the ground under your feet connecting to the earth. You can even be mindful when you're doing everyday things like showering or washing dishes, just by paying attention to how it feels, the smells, the sounds.
So it's really about finding ways to be present in whatever we're doing, no matter how boring it seems.
Exactly. And don't underestimate how powerful those little pause and observe moments can be throughout your day. Maybe you're feeling super overwhelmed by your emails. Instead of getting lost in that, take a few seconds to look out the window, notice the sky, feel the air on your skin. It's like hitting a reset button for your nervous system and coming back to this moment.
Those mini mindfulness breaks sound like a great way to deal with stress. And avoid those times when you feel totally overwhelmed. Like taking a little mental vacation for a few seconds, we could all use that sometimes. So we've talked about the benefits of mindfulness and some basic practices. How do we actually make mindfulness a part of our everyday lives?
It's all about finding those little pockets of time where you can make space for presence. And we can explore that more after a short break.
So we were talking about making mindfulness part of our daily routines, like where are some good places to start?
Morning rituals are a great place to start. Instead of hitting snooze and rushing out the door, try waking up just a few minutes earlier. And starting your day with some deep breaths or just a quiet moment, that can help set a positive tone for the day and create some calm before you jump into all the craziness.
That does sound way more peaceful than my usual morning routine. But mornings are always super hectic for me. Any tips for squeezing mindfulness in when I'm like running against the clock?
Even just a minute or two can make a big difference. You could try doing some mindful breathing while you're brushing your teeth or in the shower, or just sit for a moment and listen to the sounds around you before you start your day. It's about finding those small opportunities to just pause and reconnect with yourself.
That's a good reminder that it's not about adding more to our crazy schedules. It's about using those little pockets of time we already have and making them more mindful. What about during the workday? How can we bring mindfulness into those busy 8 hours?
Work breaks are actually a great opportunity to refresh and refocus. Instead of scrolling through social media or checking emails mindlessly, take a few minutes to stretch or breathe or just notice what's around you. You might be surprised how much that can boost your energy and make you more productive.
That makes a lot of sense. It's like giving your brain a mini vacation instead of just bombarding it with more information.
Yeah.
And finally, how about winding down at the end of the day?
Evening reflection is a wonderful way to cultivate gratitude and process what happened during the day. Before you go to bed, take a few minutes to think about your day with curiosity and openness. Like, what were some of the good things? What were some of the challenges? What are you grateful for?
So instead of just crashing into bed, totally exhausted, it's about taking a few minutes to recognize the good and bad parts of the day and appreciate the moments that really stood out. It's like ending the day on a good note instead of just feeling drained and overwhelmed.
Exactly. Now, of course, mindfulness is a practice. And like any practice, it comes with challenges.
Right. Because let's be real, our minds love to wander. So how can we get over those common hurdles that pop up when we're trying to be more mindful?
One of the most important things is to be patient with yourself. If you notice your mind wandering and don't judge yourself. Just gently bring your attention back to the present moment.
No beating ourselves up, right? It's all about that gentle redirecting. What about people who feel like they don't have enough time for mindfulness?
Start small. You don't need to meditate for an hour every day to get the benefits. Even just a minute or two of mindful breathing or a quick body scan can make a difference.
So it's about consistency, not duration. Like even just a few minutes each day can have a positive impact.
Absolutely. And finally, let go of the need to be perfect. Mindfulness isn't about doing it perfectly. It's just about showing up and being present, even if it feels messy or imperfect.
That's so important to remember. It's about progress, not perfection. It's about embracing the journey, not trying to reach some impossible ideal. Something that I find really fascinating is that mindfulness isn't just a personal thing. It's like it can have a much bigger impact.
Mm.
like those ripples spreading outwards,
Yep.
affecting not just us, but also the people around us and even society as a whole.
You've touched on something really important. The impact of mindfulness goes way beyond just the individual. When we cultivate presence and calmness within ourselves, it naturally flows into how we interact with other people. We become better listeners, more empathetic, more patient, and that creates a more harmonious environment for everyone.
So it's not just about our own well-being, it's also about improving our relationships and creating a more positive and supportive atmosphere in our communities. That's pretty powerful.
It really is. And the more people embrace mindfulness in their own lives, the more that awareness can grow and spread throughout society,
Mm.
leading to a more mindful world.
Okay, so before the break, we were talking about how we can each do our part to build a more mindful world. It's a pretty exciting thought, but where do we even start?
Well, I think the most important thing is to start with ourselves. Like cultivating mindfulness in our own lives is the foundation for everything else. You know, that saying, be the change you want to see in the world.
So before we go changing the world, we got to change ourselves.
Exactly. The more we embody mindfulness in our own thoughts and words and actions, the more we like radiate that energy outward, and that influences people and systems around us. You could say it's like that ripple effect we talked about, but instead of it just spreading out from our individual practices, it's about becoming a source of mindfulness ourselves.
I like that, becoming a source of mindfulness. So how do we actually do that? Is it just about meditating every day?
Well, that's definitely a fantastic place to start committing to a daily practice, whether it's meditation or mindful breathing or just taking moments to pause and observe it all helps you cultivate that inner stillness and awareness.
But it's not just about those formal practices, right?
Mm.
Thinking back to what we talked about earlier, like bringing mindful awareness to everyday things like eating or even showering.
You're absolutely right. It's about integrating mindfulness into everything you do, how you talk to people, how you approach your work, even how you take care of the environment. It's about bringing that quality of presence to every single thing.
Can you give us some specific examples of what that might look like in real life?
Sure, imagine you're having a conversation with someone instead of just waiting for your turn to talk. Really listen to what they're saying, try to see things from their perspective, even if you disagree with them. Respond with empathy and understanding instead of judgment or getting defensive, or think about your work instead of getting caught up in the rush and chaos. Approach your tasks with calm and focus. Be fully present with what you're doing instead of letting your mind jump ahead to the next thing on your to-do list. And when it comes to the environment, it's about making choices that align with what you believe in, reducing waste, consuming mindfully, connecting with nature. These are all ways to extend mindfulness beyond just ourselves.
So it's about making mindfulness a part of everything we do, not just something we do for a few minutes each day.
Precisely. And as we cultivate mindfulness in our own lives, we naturally inspire other people to do the same. It's contagious.
It's like that idea that you can't pour from an empty cup. Right when we take care of ourselves, we're better able to support others and make a difference in the world. But what about taking it beyond our personal circles? How can we advocate for mindfulness in a bigger way?
There are so many ways you can do that. You can support organizations that are promoting mindfulness in schools and workplaces and communities. You can encourage your elected officials to focus on policies that promote well-being and compassion, and simply talk about the benefits of mindfulness, share your experiences, and inspire others to give it a try.
So it's kind of a multi-pronged approach.
Yeah.
Cultivate mindfulness in ourselves, inspire others through our actions and words and support groups that are bringing mindfulness to more people.
Exactly. And remember that creating a more mindful world is a long-term thing. It's not
Yeah.
going to happen overnight, but every step we take in that direction, no matter how small, is a step worth taking.
It's like planting seeds, right? We might not see the results right away, but with patience and dedication and a belief in change, we can grow a world where mindfulness flourishes.
Mm.
And that brings more peace, happiness, and well-being to everyone. And that brings us to a final question for you to think about. If mindfulness can improve our own lives, our relationships, and even society as a whole, what role could it play in tackling some of the big problems we face in the world? Things like climate change, social injustice, political division. It's definitely something to consider as you continue your mindfulness journey.
It certainly is. And remember that the journey of mindfulness is a lifelong one, filled with new discoveries and growth.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into mindfulness and happiness. We hope this has helped you understand what mindfulness really is, how it can change your life, and the incredible potential it has for making a better world. As always, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep discovering the amazing power of mindfulness in your own life. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive